Now call to order the August 1, 2024 meeting of the Clearwater City Council. If you wish to address the council tonight, please complete a comment card. Comment cards are located by the clerk seated to the right of the dais. When called to speak, please hand your card to the clerk. At this time, please stand for the invocation to be given by Father Bob Swick from St. Francis Assisi, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, and let us pray. Gracious and compassionate Lord God, amidst all the calamity, conflict, confusion that screams for our leaders' attention, we pray our council members be filled with your spirit, so they may serve with a special love of community that includes safety, measures of safety for citizens and visitors. And Lord God, we ask that you guide and inspire them. In essential matters, let there be unity. In non-essential matters, let there be liberty. And in all matters, let there be charity. And Father, we pray that you make us all a channel of your peace. Where there's hatred, let us bring your love. When there's injury, your pardon, Lord. And when there's doubt, true love in you. Amen.
Thank you, Father Swick. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time we'll move to item 4.1 on the agenda. I'd like to call forward Karen Swafford and Michelle Sheldon from Human Resources.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members and City Management. My name is Karen Swafford, and I'm joined by Michelle Sheldon, and we are here along with other members of the Diversity Leadership Council and our Parks and Recreation Department to present the city's 2024 Diversity Poster Contest winners. The Diversity Leadership Council is proud to announce this is the 22nd annual year of our diversity poster and contest, and it remains to be one of our most successful outreach endeavors. Our goal is to help all participants understand the meaning of diversity and celebrate it in their lives and within their communities. At this time, I would like to bring up Michelle Sheldon as she will present the award-winning posters.
Thanks, Karen. We'll get the posters up here. All right. So each year, this contest is open to our City of Clearwater Parks and Rec, all of our recreation programs, the camp counselors, and the summer camp participants who learn diversity as part of their activity programs. The competition gets tougher every year, though, and it makes it more and more difficult to choose the winners, but you're going to see it's clear in the results that these kids understand the importance of diversity. So prizes were awarded for the first, second, and third place in the 5 to 9, 10 to 13, and ages 14 and up group. So we also chose overall grand prize winners that we'll announce at the end. So without further ado, are you ready to see the winners?
Yes.
All right. So in our age group of 5 to 9, and just so you know, the kids don't know what places they got. So this is exciting for them too, all right?
Drum roll, please.
So drum roll, exactly. Thank you. So in the 5 to 9-year-old age group, the winners are Rowan Silverman, age 9 from the Rose Center. And as you can see, the poster up at the top there, it's beautiful. I'm like going, I know I can't draw it that well, so. And our second place goes to, drum roll, let's go, all right. Miss Bernadette Downs, 5 years old, from the Rose Center. And Lena, if you thought my shoes were on point, check out hers. 'cause
Let me
they're
see.
amazing. I'm just
Let me
saying.
see.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right?
fabulous.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to see.
Her
who
and I
her
gotta
shoe
talk.
person is. And our first place in the age group of 5 to 9 is Elia Mitchell, 8 years old from the Long Center, and unfortunately, she couldn't be with us this evening, but we'll accept on her behalf. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and now let's get on to our age group of 10 to 13-year-olds. So our third place goes to, that's what I like that peanut gallery back there, let's go. Arian Herring, age 13. All right, thank you. And our second place goes to, good, just gonna say it. Leah Roque, age 10, from Morningside Recreation Center. And our first place goes to Elodie Lefebvre, age 12, from our Morningside Recreation Center. All right, our last group, age for the 14 and older, and our third place winner goes to Jacob Bozeman, age 15, and he is from our North Greenwood Recreation Center. Now, Jacob couldn't be here because he's away at camp right now, but his mom says, I'm going to come get it. So, this is Sarah Beth, so thank you very much for coming. And our second place goes to Caleb Campbell, age 14, and he's from our North Greenwood Recreation Center. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here this evening as well. But now down to our last, but first place winner in the ages of 14 and older. It goes to Miss Zaina Hussein, age 14, from the Long Center. Listen, y'all, I don't know if you're taking a look at this poster up here, but I've already talked to her about maybe our new landscape architect and just throwing it out there. So, I mean, it's amazing. That's awesome. Okay, so all of these campers have done an outstanding job of expressing the meaning of diversity through their art, as you can see. Each year we select 2 runners-up and 1 grand prize winner. So, as we go, so our third runner-up is Elia Mitchell. I don't think she was here tonight, but that's her poster there, so we'll make sure that she gets that. Our second runner-up is, come on, people. Elodie Lefebvre, age 12. And our grand prize winner is Miss Zaina Hussein. And I was talking to her father just before we came in, and this young lady, stay right there, young lady, she also competed in the Junior Olympics last weekend, and she won a gold medal in the butterfly for swimming. So congratulations to all of our people who did great work.
I would like to thank all the participants and their families for their wonderful and inspiring posters. I'd also like to give a special thanks to the Parks and Recreation Department for orchestrating the contest with their campers, and the Diversity Leadership Council, who I'm joined with today, for organizing and hosting the poster contest celebration. At this time, I would like to bring up all the winners and the DLC committee members for a quick photo op, if we may.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up.
So should we get all together?
Get back here a little bit.
Congratulations, Tim. On behalf of the staff and kids, on behalf of the entire city council of the city, I just want to congratulate you. Arts and culture are an important part of the future of Clearwater and our success going forward, and appreciate you young folks putting in the great work that we saw tonight. So congratulations, and thank you for participating. That will move to item 4.2 on the agenda. At this time, I'd like to call forward Lieutenant Thomas Bucelio. I am issuing this proclamation tonight, and it reads, whereas on August 4th, 1790, the U.S. Congress authorized the Secretary of the Treasury to create a maritime service to enforce custom laws and to prevent smuggling. And whereas the mission of the U.S. Coast Guard and the men and women of Air Station Clearwater and Station Sand Key include maritime safety, maritime and port security, and maritime stewardship. And whereas the citizens of the city of Clearwater and the greater Tampa Bay area rely on the expertise of the members of the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure the safety of friends and family who venture out upon the sea. And whereas the city of Clearwater, as a U.S. Coast Guard city, is especially appreciative of the service and sacrifices made by the members of the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure the safety of our residents and visitors. Now therefore, I, Bruce Rector, Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, in recognition of the 234th birthday of the U.S. Coast Guard, do hereby proclaim August 2024 to be U.S. Coast Guard Appreciation Month in Clearwater. Congratulations.
Sure.
And thank you for your service. I don't know if you want to say a few words. You're welcome to.
What's that?
You're welcome to say a few words if you'd like.
Well, on behalf of the Captain Phi and Air Station Clearwater, I just want to say thank you to the City of Clearwater and the members of this council for your guys' continued support. It is always helpful to know that we always have you in our corner. So thank you.
Well, you're very important to the City of Clearwater, and thank you for your service and all of your fellow Coast Guard members for service to our country and to our community.
Thank you.
For sure.
I don't know.
That'll move to item 4.3 on the agenda, end of session report. Is Representative Bearfield here tonight? I think she's here tonight.
I do not see that she's arrived yet.
Okay.
She may be,
With that, then, we'll move to item 4.4, end of session report. This time, I'd like to call forward Peter Dunbar, Martha Endenfield, and the Jones Walker Law Firm.
Mayor, members of the council, it's nice to be with you again. I know this is an initial presentation for some of you. Let me see if I could give a little bit of background of what our activities consist of, and also talk a little bit about the activities during the last session. As you're probably aware, we provide periodic written reports during the session. Those appear weekly. They go to Rosemarie. They are then available for distribution so that there is current activity and attention on those things that may be affecting the city. I'll come back to the report in just a minute. The final one, by the way, arrived earlier this month. It was the end of the veto period, shows what the complete narrative is on those things that made it through the process. But let me just talk a little bit about the session itself. There were more than 1,900 individual pieces of legislation that surfaced. Now, we're looking at all of those. Oh, by the way, let me pause just a minute. my partner Martha Edenfield is sitting behind me, and I neglected to make that introduction. Of that 1,900 this year, there were exactly 100 that we felt like touched on, may affect, would be of concern to the city of Clearwater. We worked with the League of Cities in that regard. Of those individual pieces of legislation, there were another 2,100 amendments that were offered in committee and during floor votes. Between the House and the Senate, and Representative Burfield, I think, may talk more about this in detail, there were 43 active sessions. 325 bills actually made it through the sausage factory this year. That's about average, maybe a little above average. And of those, the governor vetoed 14. One of those I'll come back to in just a minute. Let me also, I thought I might be following Representative Burfield, but I do want to acknowledge that we very much appreciate her. She is always accessible. She is always helpful. And Clearwater's lucky that that is who is one of our main voices in the Florida House. I might do this too. Let me acknowledge Senator Hooper and Councilman Albritton. One of the things, not only is he also accessible and but very involved in the appropriations process. This year, one of the things that appears in the appropriations bill that he worked is $3.8 million to deal with the abandoned vessel program. And that was part of the work you directed us into with the Fish and Wildlife Commission several years back. That's now been modified so that that funding is available for local governments through a grant program. Let me also come back to the report. One of the things that we've dealt with now for at least 5 successive years is the initiative by the legislature to try and preempt vacation rental regulation to the state and to DVPR. That bill was handled by Senator DeSigley this year, but in acknowledgement of the city of Clearwater, which we've been able to do in each of the last 5 years, the ordinance that's in place here in the city of Clearwater was exempt from any type of preemption. Now, that was one of the 14 bills that the governor vetoed. I do expect it to be back again next year in some form or fashion for its 6th iteration of trying to get it passed. I'd be happy to take some questions on the last session in a minute, but we're also at a point in the report that we provided to Rosemarie looks ahead to 2025 and what we expect coming forward. Because it is an election year, the legislative session will begin late instead of beginning in January. It kicks off on March the 4th. That gives enough time for the interim committee work to be done, the legislation to be filed, and when that begins to happen after general election day, that's when our reports will begin to come back to the city on issues that we may be concerned about. The report also identifies some of the important deadlines that are coming forward. There are deadlines on how legislation and when legislation must go into bill drafting, when it must be filed, also for appropriations requests, if there are going to be some this year, when those deadlines appear. I'd make this general observation about the next legislature. While there's lots of activity lately about the world of politics and the general election, I think the projections here in Florida is that there will be no significant change in the majority of both houses. There may be some changes in legislative seats, but we don't expect there to be many. That will tell us then that Senator Ben Albritton will be our Senate President. Representative Danny Perez from Miami will be our House Speaker. Both of them so far have not given much details on what their priorities will be other than to try and deal with the lack of affordability for the average Floridians. Everything from child care to medical attention, those would be their current priorities. So with that, that's basically an overview of the post-session from 2024. The details are all contained in the written report, and also a little bit about the pre-2025 session for things that are on the horizon. And Mayor, if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll try to stay within my 10 minutes.
Yeah. Any questions from the council? No? Thank you for your work and good report.
Thank you.
that, we'll move to item 5.1 in the agenda.
Make a motion to approve item 5.1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time we'll move to item 6 on the agenda, the consent agenda. Are there any items being removed from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I received a request to remove item 6.4.
That's it? Just
Only
six-
one item.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda accepting item 6.4?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
I did not receive an email from you, but the mayor did ask, I did not receive an email from you, but the mayor did ask individuals to state.
Well, they are 6.7, 6.9, and 7.2.
7.2 is not on the consent agenda,
Yeah.
so,
Just,
so 6, 7, and 6, 9?
6, 7, and 6, 9, yes.
Somebody like to modify the motion to,
I modify the motion to exclude 6.7 and 6.9.
as well as 6.4?
Correct.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time we'll move to item 6.4.
approved purchase order to Air Pro Inc. of Yorba Linda, California for a tree assessment inventory survey on a unit price basis in the cumulative amount of $200,000 for a 5-year term beginning October 1, 2024 through September 30, 2029 pursuant to invitation to bid 27-24 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city leadership. I'm Ali Zalowski with the Public Works Department and the Right-of-Way Division Manager. This is a 5-year contract to assess and inventory the trees within the city of Clearwater's right-of-way with a not-to-exceed amount of $200,000, which breaks down to roughly $40,000 a year. The city has been broken down to 5 zones, and the beginning of this contract will be Zone 3, which is the beach and Old Clearwater Bay area. They will, again, inventory and assess all the trees within the area. I'm sorry, within the zone. I'm sorry, okay. The vendor will assess approximately 3,000 hardwood trees with a diameter at breast height of 6 inches or greater. So they will capture the data as far as the spectrum of the species, the health, rating, and geographic distribution of the trees over the right-of-way. The data collected during this project will allow the city to develop a plan of trimming, removal, and replacements to accomplish a healthier tree canopy over the city of Clearwater. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Is there anyone here from the public who desires to speak with regard to item 6.4 on the agenda?
Tricia Kirby, 1111 Spencer Avenue. Good evening. Real quick, I saw this, I was alerted to it. And my comment on it is this. When I was training as a federal park ranger, I had a significant amount of study to learn the differences between types of trees. And this was in Utah, California, and Alaska, and Washington State. And I knew the difference between like a Sitka spruce and a western hemlock and a Douglas fir, and all the trees you could point at a tree. I knew ethnobotany, the pine cones, the bark, the leaf type. But embarrassingly, when I finished up with my career in the Forest Service and the Park Service and came back to Florida, I genuinely, I don't even want to admit it, but I didn't know the difference between what an oak tree looked like. I knew an oak, but I was like, camphor, oh, that looks like an oak tree, I don't know. So my concern is that this company is out of California. And I looked at the bids, and yes, you chose the lowest one, but there were 4 out of them were Florida companies, and they were still really close. They're only like $1 or $2 difference in the price of the trees. And I'm sure that you guys make educated decisions, but I'm still a little bit concerned. Are you gonna train these people so that they know Florida trees different from California trees? Because there really is a difference. I'm trying to learn the trees now here. I want to get trained as an arborist. Not that I want to be an arborist, but just to know the difference. But my concern is that are they going to know what kind of trees that they're assessing and inventorying, and do they speak English, and are they even interested in learning our trees? I'm curious if they even bid on it out of state like that in California. Yes, there's oak trees in California. Yes, there's palm trees in California. But the trees here are different. They really, it's a whole different ecosystem, and I'm still trying to learn it, and I've lived here now for 20 years. I mean, I grew up in Florida, but still, I didn't know the trees growing up. I mean, I knew oak and a few other, I knew palm trees and magnolia, but I didn't have the trees familiarized. So I'm just asking to make sure that we pick the right company, not just because it's the low bid. I saw it's like the most responsible and all that, but just wording wise, I would want to be sure that, I would test them. I would be like, do you know, here, send them a bunch of photos of trees on a Zoom call and say, tell me what these trees are, you know, like just so that they know what they're doing, or make sure that they're well-trained. I know that I spoke with the guy who, what's his name? Oh, I'm kind of tired today. Our major tree guy.
Matt Anderson?
No, the one who retired. No, he retired from here. He was, you know I'm talking about, the older guy, totally spacing his name right now. He did our original tree assessment inventory. What's his name? I know you guys know who I'm talking about. Anyway, I would have asked him, and he probably would have said no, but there's a lot of companies here that are really good tree companies that know the area, that are familiar with Florida and all the intricacies of Florida being unusual, and they would have been good too. So I trust that you make the right decision, but make sure these people are well-trained, please. Thank you.
Does anyone else here from the public desire to speak to item 6.4?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Patrick Raftery from the Countryside area. This item drew some attention from a number of residents who reached out to me as well. I would like to echo the comments that Tricia made about the selection of the vendor that can perform this. They were rather surprised that we picked a company that's from California for 2 basic reasons. Number one, this type of activity would seem to be most appropriately placed with a Florida company, particularly from the local area. And most importantly, a concern for the familiarity of with a company in California with the trees here in Florida, as Tricia has alluded to. Understanding that the staff probably does a good job of sending out their proposals and reviewing the quotations that are received, but in this case, it sounds like the lowest bid was received, and I'm not certain enough attention was given to the fact that they are in California, not a local company getting money, and are they very familiar with the Florida trees. So I hope that's considered as we go forward with this, because this is a very important activity to the citizens of Clearwater with respect to inventorying the trees and marking them for trimming or removal. Thank you very much for your time.
Does anyone else here from the public desire to speak to item 6.4? Seeing none, any council discussion?
No, if you need me to answer those questions, I certainly can.
Yeah, no, I think I had a couple calls as well to share with the council, and that was the concern. The questions that I received was, what's included in the bidding process? Is it just evaluating the monetary cheapest bid and lowest and cost-cutting measures, or what else is factored into that bidding decision? Was what was being asked of me.
Price is part of it, but not all of it. We asked for a very extensive amount of information, and I'll read most of it off. The contractor shall have completed a minimum of 6 tree assessment inventories projects in Florida with similar scope in the last 8 years. 4 of the projects must range from 250 to 500 trees assessed and inventoried, and at least one project must represent a minimum of 1,000 trees. And at least one project must represent 1,250 to 2,000 plus trees. In addition, we requested references, and with this vendor, I looked at the references and contacted them, who were scattered throughout Florida. The nearest one I believe was Sarasota, which was very similar in scope as well. So they do very good inventories and are knowledgeable within the trees, within, Florida. And some of the references even stated, one second. All of them said they were able to successfully rate the trees within their guidelines, which ours were similar as well. And they had no issues with them at all. So they have their knowledge, and they hire arborists with extensive knowledge who are able to identify the trees we have.
Any other discussion by the council? Is there a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 6.4.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Then we'll move to agenda item 6.7.
Authorize an assignment of purchase order from Angelo's Aggregate Materials LTD, doing business as Angelo's Recycled Materials, Angelo's, to Wrangler Holdco Corp., doing business as GFL Solid Waste Southeast LLC of St. Petersburg, Florida, for yard waste, Class 3 waste, and construction demolition debris disposal. Approve an additional 2-year renewal option in the amount of $2,300,000 pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.563, paren 1, paren C, cooperative purchasing, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Member Kervin St. Amy, Solid Waste Director. Council, Solid Waste is seeking your approval for yard waste, Class 3 waste, construction debris, and disposal. On September 2nd, 2023, Council approved a purchase order to Angelo's Aggregate in a not-to-exceed amount of $3,900,000 for the term of October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2024. This was a cooperative agreement with the City of Lago, bid number 21-B-27. On April 1st, 2024, a notification was sent informing the city that GFL acquired Angelo's. Solid Waste seeks council authorization to continue service with GFL for the remainder of the term through September 30, 2024, with a $732,441.78 remaining on the initial amount of the $3,900,000. Solid Waste also seek your approval for additional 2 years renewal option to not to exceed $2,300,000. Any questions?
Anyone here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 6.7?
I'm Mr. Haluba. And I think that this expense to Angelo's is really an inappropriate use of enterprise funding. In the past, we've seen how poorly Clearwater manages, or in some cases, mismanages utility service pricing, especially recycling. Now, there have been claims. Ms. Texera and I did a lot of back and forth emails, some of which I copied to some of you. And she maintains that utility overcharges and minimum charges are justified. I disagree. Other cities do it, so why shouldn't Clearwater overcharge their utility customers? Well, because that's just wrong. Ms. Texera mentioned that snowbirds use less, so they must pay more. Well, not in my world, and not in this country that I'm proud of. You pay for what you get, not for things you don't get. She also claims that the bond rating agencies like overcharges and the minimum charges. And I'm sure they do, because Clearwater collects millions of dollars in enterprise-funded utilities that they deliver nothing for. Again, this expense to Angelo, I believe, is an inappropriate use of enterprise funds, not only for water and sewer that they're pulling it from, not only from the gas department that they're pulling it from, but they're taking money from other places and mixing the two together. They're taking money from Parks and Recreation and other non-enterprise funded functions of the city, taxpayer supported, except Clearwater Police. And that's where they should take the most money from, because we know there's a lot of garbage there.
Does anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 6.7? Council discussion? Is there a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 6.7.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll move to agenda item 6.9. Oh,
Can't,
yeah.
6.9, cancel October 14, 2024 work session and the October 16, 2024 council meeting. Council members, this is a request from staff to accommodate your trip to Nagano, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Does anyone here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 6.9?
I'm Mr. Haluba. And I think that with a 2-week break in between these council sessions and the work sessions, that could have been worked in somehow for this trip. I don't support this trip. I don't see that it has any benefit to the city of Clearwater whatsoever. I think the proper move would be to, butt out of it and cancel it right away. Now, assuming that Ms. Poirier is going on the trip, does that count as days away from her residence on Cleveland Street?
Does anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 6.9?
So, Tricia Kirby, 1111 Spencer Avenue. Years ago, my mother worked she did 30 years with Pinellas County School System, and they organized, one of her staff people organized the Japanese trip with the students, like going over there and then exchange students back and forth and all that. It is, in my opinion, hugely diplomatic and responsible for a city to foster connections across the world with other places. And because one of my dear, dear friends, who you know, is organizing this trip, Amber, I know she's really excited about it. I know she's doing a great job. I know you guys are going to have a fantastic time because you have people on the city staff that care about you and they want to make sure that you have good connections there. But as a Clearwater resident here, I fully, fully support you cultivating these international relationships for the good of our community. So I just want to say, go for it. My tax dollars hard at work for you. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful trip and really, really enjoy yourself.
Does anyone else here desire to speak to agenda item 6.9? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve agenda item 6.9.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. At this time, Representative Burfield is here, and so with the council's consent, I will come back to item 4.3 on the agenda and invite Representative Burfield to the podium.
Good evening.
It is a pleasure to be with you all this evening. I would like to first of all begin by saying thank you. Thank you for the confidence, the trust, and the diligent work and collaborations that we have been able to have over the past year. It has allowed myself and the Florida legislature to make great progress and to ensure the quality of life that we experience here in the city of Clearwater as well as the state of Florida. During this year, I had the opportunity to work on a number of different pieces of legislation that not only impact the state as a whole, but us as citizens as well. Some of those bills were crucial bills that, in my very humble opinion, one was House Bill 855, which really focused on some health issues that people are facing associated with dental. As we think about the impact that today's inflation is having on our citizens, the ability to provide certain protections around things as basic as healthcare is critical. I also had the privilege of working on House Bill 1301, which outlined some standards for the Department of Transportation. One of the things that I've had the pleasure in returning to the Florida legislature and realizing is we were talking about the same issues today that we were talking about 20 years ago. Now, I'm sure none of you can imagine that. I'm sure that seems shocking to everybody. But one of the things that we tried to do was actually put in front of the legislature and the department a challenge where we start looking proactively at our transportation system in the state of Florida. Instead of saying, oh, so we have a new community here, we're going to build infrastructure around it, we actually take the time to stop and say, wait a minute, we know there are going to be developments going into this area. We know that in 20 years, we hope to be this type of a community or this type of a state that provides a very strong supply chain for the state of Florida and for its residents. To do that, we need to take steps today to make sure that we are ready for that 20-year mark when we get there. I'm proud to tell you that after it being put in 3 different bills, it actually saw the light of day and was approved by the governor. So it is one of those things that when people say, why isn't the legislature doing something proactive? Surprise, we are. We are truly starting to think along those lines and make sure that we're being proactive for our citizens. I also looked at a piece of legislation that was very important to me personally. It was also associated with healthcare as well. You may not realize it, but in the state's $117 billion budget, we spend approximately $20 billion. Let me say that again. Of $117 billion, we spend about $20 billion on Medicaid and healthcare in the state of Florida. When you consider that, you have to ask yourself, well, how do we know we're doing the right thing? Well, I have to tell you, prior to now, we didn't know that we were. One of the things that we were able to identify as we were starting to ask questions and trying to be good fiduciary representatives of the citizens was we realized that the Agency for Healthcare Administration was not sharing with us what that $20 billion was going to, how it was being implemented. We're citizens getting the services that we're paid for. And so that is a piece of legislation. While it moved forward, we will continue to work around that and make sure that citizens are getting the care that they should be getting and that our taxpayer dollars are actually going towards what we hope that it will be providing for the citizens. Another piece of legislation that was very interesting to me was a piece of legislation that came out actually of South Florida. A very good friend of mine, Peggy Goslet Seidman, sponsored the piece of legislation. It was around keeping our waters clean. One of the challenges that she had found down in her neck of the woods was as a boater, as an advocate boater, she would jump into the water and there would be certain things in the water that shouldn't be there. We'll just say it that way because we're on TV and in front of a lot of people. But because of that, the question came, how can we make sure that we're taking care of our environment, that we're putting the protections in place, that we're enabling our communities, our city councils, our city commissioners, to do the work that they need to be doing to protect the environment and to protect the citizens. So I was proud to be a sponsor of that piece of legislation with her as well. Beyond that, there were a number of pieces of legislation that I had the proud privilege of either being primary co-sponsor or co-sponsor of. Some of those related to issues such as short-term rentals, some tied into condominium legislation that was passed. We will continue to work on that issue as we have a number of condominiums in our city and have residents who are really facing some challenges at this point in time. We also looked at a number of tax breaks. We are currently in the middle of the tax-free back-to-school holiday. But what we tried to do was make sure that we were able to give an opportunity to give back to the citizens that are entrusting us with their dollars. Much like you, we tried to be good fiduciaries when it is associated with tax dollars. And so we have done things along the lines of back to school, as well as trade, as well as being active in your community, recreational opportunities. So we have done a number of different things along those lines where we're giving back to the citizens. The money is going to where it should be, and that is in the citizens' pockets. I have had the honor of working with a number of you on some appropriations requests that we had put out there. We were successful in some of those, and others of those we were not quite as successful. But I know we still have some work to do to bring back dollars to the city of Clearwater so that we can ensure the quality of life that all citizens have become accustomed to. And I look forward to continuing that work with you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from the representative? No?
I just want to make a comment.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you. I feel that you are so accessible. Whenever I have a concern or a question, you are easily accessible and a great source of information. And I really feel very confident that you're there representing Clearwater's best interests. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
I would also like to echo that sentiment. Representative Burfield answers my emails, phone calls, and questions anytime we have one. And I really do believe you're doing awesome work for our community, and thank you very much for that.
Vice Mayor? Yeah.
I'm going to echo the same thing. I mean, yeah, and you know, we've been talking for the past couple of years, so you've done a great job, and you're very good at listening and doing whatever you can for Clearwater, so thank you very much.
And I know we have some work to do on some issues we've talked about and look forward to continuing
Right.
that.
Well, I might as well jump in line and echo the same thing, but I greatly appreciate your service, your passion for our city of Clearwater and the residents of Clearwater, and your work ethic is greatly appreciated, and you never stop. You are easily accessible, and you are greatly appreciated in our community, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, to summarize, the entire city council appreciates the work for us and the citizens of Clearwater, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a good evening.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item 7.1 on the agenda.
Approve the City of Clearwater's fiscal year 2024-2025 annual action plan, which is the fifth and final action plan of the fiscal year 2020, 2021 through 2024-2025 consolidated plan to implement the goals and objectives set forth in the consolidated plan and authorize the appropriate officials to enter into agreements with HUD and organizations approved for funding together with authorization to execute administrative adjustments to same as needed.
Public speaking, it's always a bad idea to follow a skilled politician, so I'll do the best I can. Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department. I'm going to use a brief PowerPoint to present to you the annual action plan for 2024-25, as I did at Monday's work session. The annual action plan is our plan for the use of CDBG and home funds. Those, of course, are federal funds. This will be the fifth and final annual action plan under the current five-year consolidated plan. The consolidated plan lays out our goals and objectives over the five-year planning period, and the annual action plan identifies projects and activities that are in line with those goals and objectives. So it's a bit of a process we go through each year for the competitive aspect of our annual action plan. It started in February when we published a notice of funding availability, and we opened up a 30-day period for accepting applications. So nonprofits seeking CDBG funding is primarily where the competition is. Home funds are for housing programs. We accept those applications year-round, and it's not really a competitive on a competitive basis like CDBG. On May 14th, let's see, for CDBG, we ask a technical review committee to assist us with that competitive process by ranking and scoring the applications. On May 14th, the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board approved the staff recommended funding allocations, which were based exclusively on the TRC, the Technical Review Committee scoring and ranking. When we created the draft of our annual action plan, we posted it for a 30-day public comment period. The first public hearing to discuss the annual action plan occurred at the July 9th NAHAB meeting. The board recommended council approval of the plan at that meeting. This evening will serve as the second and final public hearing. We're required to submit the plan to HUD no later than August 16th. So these are the funding levels that are available. Some of these numbers are estimates, and they're high because we expect to spend down some of the funding that would otherwise carry over to the next fiscal year. So we made some changes to our public facilities and public service programs this year. We saw a little bit of a decline over the years in participation. We increased our maximum grant for requests for public facilities projects from $90,000 to $180,000. This is really in response to higher construction costs and also a desire for more impactful projects. With public services, we increased our maximum request to $50,000 with a preference to new or expanding programs. These changes made for a much more competitive process. We received 12 public facilities applications and 20 public service applications, the most I've had in my tenure here in Clearwater. So the staff recommendation is to fund 4 public facilities projects. The Willa Carson project will provide a substantial rehabilitation of their health and wellness center on North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. It's right in the heart of the North Greenwood CRA. The Homeless Empowerment Program submitted 2 of the highest ranking projects, providing for improvements to its dining hall and also to its Family Transition Center program. Learning Independence for Tomorrow is new to our CDBG program. LIFT is a learning academy for adults and children with neurodiversity. This project is to construct a new playground for the children in their program. As I explained on Monday, we had a public comment about this item, questioning whether or not it's appropriate to use these funds for a private school. This project is eligible under CDBG funding, and LIFT will have to provide documentation that the children using this playground meet the income requirements of CDBG. So we're allowed to spend up to 15% of our CDBG entitlement on public services. It's very strict. And this is for nonprofits to provide services to the community. So that total amount we can spend is $141,072. With program maximum grant of $50,000, staff is recommending dividing that funding among the top 3 highest scoring public service applicants. And that means $47,024 each. A Turning Point provides shelter and services for people facing substance abuse issues. Funding for Metropolitan Ministries' Neighbor Hope program will support the salary of a case manager to provide housing services and community resources to the North Greenwood residents. And St. Vincent de Paul Cares will use the funding to administer a rapid rehousing program in Clearwater. There were 5 additional public service applications that will be funding with state funds, so they're not part of this plan. So when we add economic development activities, which I'll go over in a minute, we're proposing to fund 10 out of the 20 public service applicants. So we're allowed to use 20% of CDBG entitlement funds and program income on program administration. That's primarily used for staff salaries and also some consulting work. And we can use 10% of home funding on admin expenses as well. And as I mentioned a moment ago, economic development activities, they are a very difficult fit with CDBG funds. We work hard to make it work. We're persistent with making the effort and we'll continue to do so, but it's a difficult fit. We've provided funding to Prospera for several years to provide technical assistance to micro enterprise and small businesses in Clearwater. WeCare's Upward Boost program provides technical assistance and business support to family child care providers operating in Clearwater. And we're working on getting a facade improvement program running. We believe this program will complement the CRA's commercial grant program in the North Greenwood, although we can administer our program in other parts of the city outside of the CRA. And we have some unencumbered funds that we can put towards those activities if they spend down their funds in other ED activities as well. So with our housing budget, we budget general categories. We do it this way because if we budget a large investment, a particular project with a large investment and it doesn't go through, we have to do a substantial amendment to our annual action plan. It's very staff intensive. So we try to avoid that by budgeting general categories. So what we do is we divide up the available funding based on the types of projects we think will be funded during the program year and what we anticipate will be brought forward by our development partners. So you can see the amounts on the screen. The amounts under those 3 funding sources is just over $6 million. And we do have some projects in mind. I'll be meeting with the city manager tomorrow and talk through a couple of them. Lastly, we reserve funding for potential acquisition and demolition to meet the national objective of removal of slum and blight. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions, please.
Okay. Does anyone here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.1? Seeing none, is there any council discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 7.1.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Lane. This time we'll move to agenda item 7.2.
Mayor, good evening. 7.2 is one that I'll be speaking to. So 7.2 is one that we discussed on Monday at the work session. I know everyone's familiar with it, and I don't think we need to retread all of the ground that we discussed on Monday. It's all recorded for everyone to see. However, I would like to recap a few things for the benefit of the public and also talk about some additional details that we may not have gotten to explore on Monday, if that's helpful. So the first thing is just to recap a little bit. As Councilmember Cotton pointed out on Monday, this was an issue that he put on my radar early on in the term. He brought the concerns as far as the energy situation, affordability, tree removal, all of it. All very serious issues. In fact, just by complete coincidence, we heard tonight from Pete Dunbar discussing how it is a priority of incoming legislative leadership to address affordability in Florida. And we heard from Representative Burfield about the inflationary pressures that our citizens are facing and how important it is to put money back in our citizens' pockets. And I know that the council hears that more than anyone, far more than I do, but I got to hear it from you. So as Councilmember Cotton asked me about that and said, well, what are the options and what can we look at? We started doing some research within the city attorney's office, and we found that we happened to be in a pretty good timing window to bring forward some options to the council. So what are those options and why are we in this timing window? Back in 1995, as we said on Monday, the city signed a 30-year franchise agreement with Florida Power. At the time, Florida Power was an entirely Florida-focused company. They did not, as far as I know, have a parent company out of state. It was really focused solely on Florida issues. At that point, Florida Power was also much smaller, and so was Clearwater. 30-year franchise agreements were pretty common back then, so that in and of itself was not unreasonable. I don't see a problem with it per se. However, over time, it is not uncommon in the utility industry to see assets get bought and sold. I'm not saying it happens every day. It certainly is not a daily or weekly event, but I would say that it's fairly common to see some company buy out another, some company get sold to another, et cetera. So in our case, Florida Power was ultimately subsumed by Progress Energy, and Progress Energy ultimately subsumed by Duke. A little bit more complicated history than that, but that's the gist of it. And so Clearwater has operated under the Duke banner since 2012. As I understand it, Duke has taken assignment of some of those initial contracts that were entered into with Florida Power. That's the gist of it. Because it is a 30-year franchise agreement, that agreement expires in December of next year. That places us in a unique timing window where the council is going to have to do something. Now, what that something is, we'll talk about, what the options are, we'll talk about, and ultimately it's up to the council to decide. But we are in that timing window where some sort of choices have to be made, where some sort of evaluation has to be made, and some sort of decisions have to be pondered. For context, 1995 was a time when we did not have Beach by Design. It was a time when the majority of Clearwater residents were not on the internet, and it was a time when Rita Garvey was the mayor. Things have changed a little bit since then, right? So how do we go about evaluating a decision that involves something that hasn't been looked at in decades, when the city itself has changed so much, and even the company that's serving us is somewhat different than the company that was serving us in 1995. My experience since coming to Clearwater, and I've only been city attorney for 3 years, but my experience has been that when Clearwater is facing significant either negotiations or significant decision points, the standard practice has been to hire experts from the outside in order to advise the city, make recommendations. I think there are some good reasons to do that in most instances, and I'll give some examples just over the past 3 years. And I know that for those council members, like the vice mayor and council member Teixeira, you guys have been here for it. And then for the other 3 have not been here for some of those. So to give one example, think about Gotham. So when we negotiated that original deal with Gotham in 2022, went out for referendum, we were all very excited, it passed, it was amazing to see our voters get behind it. Literally, not to get off topic, but literally one of the happiest days of my life to actually see our voters get behind Clearwater in the way that they did. But as we all know, those inflationary pressures affect businesses just like they affect residents. And Gotham came back to us in the beginning of 2023 to explain how those inflationary pressures in the post-COVID environment were affecting their ability to consummate the project. They then asked us to make a lot of changes to the project, and we had to make some decisions at that point. The decision could have been yes, it could have been no, it could have been a counter offer, but how do you even go about making those decisions, and how do you assess the wisdom of what a party is asking you to agree to? So in that instance, the city hired HR&A consultants, which at the time was recommended by Michael Delk. Michael Delk was the assistant city manager. I supported that recommendation, and so did the council. I dare say it worked out pretty well for the city. The information that we got from HR&A was absolutely invaluable. I thought their report was excellent. It was very high quality, and it allowed us to negotiate a good deal with Gotham that has now benefited all of the citizens of Clearwater. That's one example. Some other examples that I've seen over just the past 3 years that I've been here. Think about the Phillies. Now with the Phillies, we all know that we're in ongoing conversations with them. We hope that they're going to extend and hopefully expand their presence in the city of Clearwater. But we all know that that's a big topic. We all know that's an important topic for us. And we all know, and I'm not ashamed to say, that we're probably not, with the exception of the mayor, experts on the business of baseball. I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't think the city manager is either. And so having experts come in from CAA Icon who could advise the city, both the city manager, city council, myself, and help us understand the business of baseball just made sense, because how would we even make intelligent decisions if it's a topic that is so specialized that it is not something within our normal purview? Some other examples. Stantec with utility rates, right? When the city manager brings forward utility rates to the council, she's not throwing darts at a wall. She's not guessing. She's not saying, well, you know, this sounds good, that sounds good, right? She is understandably and rightly relying on what the experts tell us. Literally, the manager and I were in a meeting just the other day, talking with Stantec and going through in great detail that evaluation. That makes sense because you're being asked as a council member to make choices that affect the public. And so as a council member, you'll be best equipped to make those choices when you have the knowledge and you're armed with the knowledge. Other examples include the Clearwater Gas Company. So valuations have been done for the propane division. Why did we do that? Why didn't we just put it out for a hard bid and say, oh, well, you know, we'll see what we get. Yeah, no problem. Highest bidder wins. Why don't we do that? Because if we did that, we'd have no idea whether we're getting good value out of the propane division. None at all. How could you even make that decision intelligently? Other examples that may not be obvious to the public. Think about Coachman Park. Coachman Park's an $84 million investment of public funds. But I'll tell you, what a lot of folks probably don't know is that the city hired an owner's representative to serve as our impartial advisor during that process. The city paid someone from the outside to keep an eye on that project, to advise city leadership on how that project is going, what can we do better to get the best possible outcomes for the city of Clearwater. I'll just add one or two more, because there's a lot. Think about the Baycare Sound, right? When the city built Coachman Park, right, and the city knew that it wanted to have a good sponsor for the park, for the amphitheater, how was that decision made? How would the council know, or I know, and I'm not ashamed to say it, how would any of us know what that valued sponsorship is worth? With the exception of the mayor, I doubt that any of us have the expertise in that topic to say, this is what it's worth. Again, not ashamed to say it. I think the city made the right decision in bringing on an outside expert who could advise the city and intelligently give the council confidence that this partnership with Baycare makes a lot of sense for us, and it made sense for Baycare. So it inspired public confidence in the process and allowed everyone to get a deal that made sense. And then finally, although this is by no means the only other example, but I think I've made my point, think about how we deal with our own staff as a city. It wasn't long ago when we hired Evergreen to do a salary study for staff. Now, we didn't have to do that, right? City manager could have told human resources that they have to shoulder that burden alone. She could have said that we will do this evaluation on our own without relying on any outside expertise. But the manager recognized that when we're talking about something as important as our staff, it is crucial to get it right, to make sure our staff are rightly compensated and that we are competitive in the marketplace and that we do not overlook crucial knowledge that affects our 2,000 employees here in the city. That was the right decision. So I will stop with the examples, but I think my point is as follows, right? The normal practice of the city of Clearwater, at least in the time that I've been here, and including many examples that I really have not been involved in, is to bring on outside experts when there are big choices ahead, when there are big negotiations to be had, when there are big questions to be asked, and particularly when those are not within the normal experience. Why would they be in a case like energy, which the city hasn't had to think about since 1995? So that's kind of the prefatory remarks. The scope of service that we're looking at here with Nugent, if the council decides to move forward with it, I think is pretty comprehensive. It includes rate modeling, undergrounding evaluations, tree removal, emergency response, all of the things that we know are crucial to understanding how electricity needs to flow within the city of Clearwater. Nugent, as a company, has done studies for Chicago, San Diego, Ann Arbor, other major cities across America, and certainly have far more experience than I would ever hope to have in this topic, or I dare say anyone else currently on staff. One thing that, however, that I think is important, and I regret not talking about this on Monday, because this is something that we could discuss through one-on-ones, but I now realize with regret that it probably would have been best to have the conversation on Monday. And it has to do with rate modeling when it comes to electricity and how those monies are spent. When you get money from any source, you have to decide where it's going to go. The obvious expense, of course, is in running the utility. That covers the majority of it. But what do you do with everything above your basic expenses? Do you spend the money on dividends? Do you spend the money on undergrounding? Do you spend money on community support? Or do you have enough for some combination of the three, separate from rate modeling? The reason I say this now is because in Clearwater, we have a very strong tradition of a lot of community partners that the city supports. We all know, because we all partner with a lot of entities, particularly nonprofit entities here in the city. And I know that Duke, to their credit, has also supported some of our nonprofits. And so I think we need to recognize that, and I think we need to applaud that, as well as encourage them to enhance those activities. All of that is good. But one thing I want to call to the council's attention that I have not previously is that the council gets to decide rate modeling with whatever utility you have. That's true for the gas company today. It's true for the water and sewer utility. And it would be true if the council ever made a decision in the future regarding electric service. You have a choice to make to support community partners. For example, if the council wanted to move forward tonight with the Nugent item, the council could tell staff to direct Nugent to put into the rate model a dollar amount each year that goes to Clearwater nonprofits. That would give assurance to both the council and to our partners that they will not be lost, that they will not be forgotten in that process, and it's your choice as to what that dollar amount is. Remember that these are really just numbers on a spreadsheet, so it can be changed at any given moment in time. It's all about where your priorities are, just like Duke as a business has to decide where their priorities are today. Clearwater's priorities, of course, are Clearwater. Duke's priorities go far beyond Clearwater, as we would expect them to do. So that was something I wanted to throw out there. That is an option that the council has if you decide to move forward with the feasibility study, you could certainly tell staff, either from the dais or through one-on-one meetings, that you would like to include a line item to support Clearwater nonprofits, or if you'd like to make it broader than that, you could say Pinellas County nonprofits. The salient point is that this is just a line item and an expense. And just like the way we already run the gas company, you choose where your line items go. So I don't think anyone has to get lost in the shuffle, and I understand and appreciate a lot of the great work that our partners do in the community. I want to talk next about investment and cost. So when you're asking, and I don't mean you individually, but like when anyone in the public is asking, what is something worth? The question in my mind is, how do you answer that question? Because different things are worth different amounts to different people. We all have subjective value systems in what something is worth, right? I might value things differently than any one of you who might value things differently than each other. The cost here is $504,000. Is that a lot, or is that a drop in the bucket? And the answer really depends on your perspective. I had a mentor years ago who said something that really stuck with me. I wish I applied it more in my life, but I do remember it tonight. And she said to me that a great expression, especially when you're in a challenging situation or a tense situation, is to say to someone, from where I'm sitting, and to begin the conversation with from where I'm sitting. So what I'm about to say on the cost of this is primarily from where I'm sitting, recognizing that people might be sitting in different places and have different perspectives on the relative value. I say this with humility because my opinion on this topic is no better than anyone else's. When it comes to legal matters, I'm a board certified expert in local government, as are other attorneys in my office. I'm a specialist in local government matters. But this, when it comes to value judgments and where your money is well spent, those are political decisions, those are personal decisions, and it's very subjective. So what I'm about to say is nothing more than David's opinion, no better than anyone else's. From where I am sitting, this is actually pretty inexpensive relative to what the council is getting. Here's why I say that. Totally subjective. Number one is because even though the total cost is $504,000, New Gen is only $155,000. The contract itself has 3 different entities who will be supporting the city if you choose to move forward with it. New Gen is actually the prime contractor, which is why they're listed, but the breakdown in cost in the contract is only $155,000 for New Gen. So how do we value that? How does that compare to anything else? Well, as a percentage of the contract, it certainly is less than half. The majority of the expenses in the contract actually go to engineering. They don't even go to the rate study consultant. It's actually electrical engineers who make the big bucks, showing that I made some very poor career choices. So yes, that is true. I should have been an electrical engineer. But I think we all know from many contracts the city has had that engineering is expensive. I mean, how many engineering contracts do we have that come forward? The council sees it every day. But that's the cost driver in this, not actually New Gen as far as the consultant. But let's take it one step further. How do we compare New Gen to other consultants that the city has hired? And again, this is very subjective. I was like, but here's what is objective. What is objective is that New Gen is charging us less for their service, meaning the $155 for their portion of it, than Stantec is charging us just to do our utility study for water sewer. And Stantec has the benefit of coming in to a city that is well established, a rate model that is well established, with a very good client. So you think that they will be offering us the best possible prices. And Stantec is still charging us more than what New Gen is charging to start from scratch on a very complex topic from folks who will need to be flying in from out of town. That's my perspective. But I'm going to share a little bit more on why I see it this way. And again, this is from where I'm sitting. Again, no value in what I'm saying beyond just my overall observations and experience, but no specialist, no expert evaluation. It's nothing like that. But I have a responsibility to the city to give the best advice I can. So I'm going to say one more thing. In relative terms, right, when we look at the other experts that we have hired, compared with the amount of money at stake, to me, this seems like a drop in the bucket. Why do I say that? Well, some simple math, and I know Jay Ravens is here, he could certainly confirm that as our finance director, tells us that we get about $10.5 million every year from our franchise fees from Duke. Duke does not pay that out of their shareholder dividends. They pass those costs along to consumers. But $10.5 million a year is what comes in to the city's coffers. Just extrapolate that over 15 years. Don't even talk about a 30-year contract. Let's say we do a 15-year contract. The future value of that to the city is $200 million. That's just the franchise fee. That doesn't include the intangible values that I know the council has heard when it comes to the tree removal issues, the undergrounding issues, all of the things that Councilmember Cotton brought to my attention from the very beginning. The affordability, $200 million just on the future value on a 15-year franchise if all the terms are the same. But that's just to us. Our franchise fee is 6% of Duke's base revenues. So when I look at this and I see 500 grand, it's all relative. It's like my value judgment, I see that as a very small amount of money relative to what is at stake for both the city and all of our voters. But that's just David's value judgment. I want to say one more thing about the costs. In government, as I know the council is well aware, of course city staff are aware, but the public oftentimes is not. A dollar from one place is different from a dollar from another place. The public oftentimes sees the total dollars that get collected and total dollars that get spent, and that's understandable. But what they do not often see is that in government, we have restricted funds, we have unrestricted funds. Some funds come from millage, some come from utility funds, some come from parking, and a variety of other sources. Okay? Some are earmarked for special things. These funds, as stated in the agenda item, and again, Mr. Ravens, our finance director, is here, so by all means can correct me if I misstate anything. These funds are special program funds. Special program funds do not come from millage. No one's property taxes would be spent on this study. They do not come from our utility funds. No one's water and sewer bill is being spent on this. No one's solid waste funds are being spent on this. None of the enterprise funds are being spent on this. As the council often hears, particularly from Mr. Haluba, none of those funds are being spent on this. Instead, these are monies that are miscellaneous revenues that are unencumbered and unallocated. Where do they come from? Mr. Ravens would be in a better position to explain this, but as I understand it, this is a combination of miscellaneous sources, such as things like speeding tickets, court fines, and the interest we get from revenues that are unspent, unencumbered. I want to emphasize that if the council does decide to move forward with this study, and I want to say in no uncertain terms, and again, Mr. Ravens can correct me if I'm wrong, this will have zero impact on millage, zero impact on utility rates, zero impact on any budgeted funds or allocated funds for this year, and zero impact on the budget that the city manager is preparing for next year. That is my understanding. I think I will pause there because I need a drink of water. No, I will pause there and be happy to take any questions. I'm sure, I know there's other folks who are here from staff. If there's questions for staff, questions for me, happy to answer them, et cetera. So.
We're going to go ahead and take public comment after this, but I did want to clarify, you mentioned Mr. Ravens, but there were 4 of you that met with NewGen, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. So the meeting with NewGen, or at least the initial meeting, was myself, ACM Slaughter, Brian Miguel, our cast director, and Jay Ravens. So we also met with a different company, but at the risk of speaking for others, I think the consensus was that NewGen was by far the more impressive one.
Okay. With that, is there anyone here from the public that desires to speak to agenda item 7.2?
I'm Mr. Haluba, and I wish you'd have been an electrical engineer also. Clearwater should not take over the electric utility service. Reason being, they'll raise the rates just like they've done with water and, you know, then double rate to take the water away with sewer. They'll have minimum usage on it just like they do on everything else, and they'll hold your feet to the fire. That's called extortion, because if you don't want to pay for recycling or reclaim the water, they'll cut everything off. That's extortion. It's tantamount to a organized crime organization. That's why Clearwater should not take over electric service. Because I believe they'll squander that money, mismanage it like they do with the other utilities. And there was a, you know, a whole list of bullet points on a PDF attached to this. I don't know, 8 or 10. So I'm going to try to save the city of Clearwater $500,000 right now. I'm going to answer the last 2 questions on there first. From where I sit, undergrounding is always impractical. Doesn't mean it doesn't have, you know, some merits, but it's always impractical. The other questions, the answers are no, 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 etc. No, it shouldn't happen. But there's one question that I'm going to read out loud here that I just couldn't really believe. Public safety. Can municipalization improve public safety by allowing Clearwater Police to manage electrical service during a police SWAT response? I can hardly say it without laughing. If there's a SWAT response that happens in Clearwater, Pinellas County Sheriffs will take care of it. They're primary law enforcement. Clearwater Police will be under their direction, you know, and Pinellas County Sheriff's Office will decide if the lights are on or not. Because I really think there's some serious management problems with Clearwater Police, and I'm going to mention it over and over and over again. And the utility department is not much better. So no, this should not take over electric utilities.
Is there anyone else here from the public that desires to speak to agenda item 7.2?
Hello, Council, City Management. My name is Samuel Hutkin. I live at 755 El Dorado. I think I'm actually going to speak a little bit on the fact that, first of all, as far as people speaking and coming up here, the fact that we don't have citizens to be heard now because of situations like Mr. Luba bad-mouthing and talking in a negative way, I find it a waste of time, my time, your time, and I really wish that that wouldn't continue. But unlike that, I want to talk about my expertise that have done development through multiple states throughout the country. I feel this is a great idea. I feel that we have to at least see what we can do. The city of Clearwater has managed things greatly, and with our new team and staff, they have done an amazing job with our actually gas company. I feel that Mr. Margolis has coined things perfectly. I don't have to repeat some of the things that you said about the money being spent. I feel we can always negotiate, as far as that money is being concerned, but we need to see what we can do, because I think the money will actually save money. I believe that the city will save us money with the pricing, with some of the things that we can do with when the city of Clearwater takes over, possibly. But I think what we need to do is look and see if we do a study, can we, as we go forward, if we see that it doesn't work, that we can pull back and maybe not spend that much money. I do understand that money and how it's being spent as far as how it's being earmarked, but I just believe that it's definitely something we need to look at. I appreciate the staff and the council on what you guys have done to this point. You are hiring well, you are managing well, and you are doing a great job, and I trust you guys to do the right job. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.2?
Good afternoon or good evening, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Melissa Satius.
One second, Ms. Satius.
Yes.
She requested additional minutes. Libby Hector, Sharon Arroyo, Anna Gibbs, Kim Graves, and Antonio Price. Thank you.
Thank you
So
very
you
much.
have 8 minutes.
Again, my name is Melissa Satius. I have the privilege of being the state president for Duke Energy Florida. I actually began working for Duke Energy 40 years ago as a part-time 19-year-old student in St. Petersburg. And a good deal of the time that I've worked for the company, all of it here in Pinellas County, I was government and community relations manager and had the honor of working very closely with officials and leaders with the city of Clearwater and those in the business community. And throughout those years, the formula that really worked for us was the fact that we worked so closely together through the growth, through problem solving, and with the many wonderful nonprofits that make the city of Clearwater such a special, special place. And the key to our success has always been our ability to sit down and have a conversation, pick up the phone, call about a problem, and figure out together how we would reach a resolution. And that's from project management, system improvements, large account management, serving on boards, philanthropic giving. We have worked side by side with the city of Clearwater. And our franchise renewal process is no different. We don't wait for the expiration of a franchise to understand the priorities of our city partners. And it's that foundational relationship that we have with the city of Clearwater and with so many of our cities that allow us to build upon and ensure the vitality, the continued vitality of the priorities that are important to the city of Clearwater. So in the last 5 years, we have renewed 41 of 41 franchises in our service area. We serve over 120 municipalities, from large urban cities to small rural towns. I am aware only of one city that did hire a consultant, but truly the process was sitting down with officials, with staff, understanding priorities, hearing the questions from them of information that they needed to make decisions about their city, and so that we could understand what was important to them. But these franchise agreements don't grant the right to serve. And I think that's a really important distinction for franchise agreements. The company has the right to serve through the Florida Public Service Commission. And so franchises are really related to how we operate, build, maintain infrastructure within rights of ways and easements and all the associated types of permitting processes that go with that. And if you look at these 41 franchise agreements that we just have renewed, they are all very, very consistent in language. From the fee, the term, which now, and I agree with the city attorney, 30-year franchises are not the norm these days. The minimum is 10, and we understand that. So we see that consistency in all of those franchise agreements. And we also have a favored nations clause in each of them that allows a city, if we were to grant some special provision to one city in a franchise agreement, that favored nations clause allows other cities to benefit. And all of this is meant for that consistent language in the franchise agreement. In some cases, though, there are a lot of our municipal partners that really want to focus on the other priorities that they value. And it could be more guidelines, more understanding, more planning, more communication around vegetation management, undergrounding, overhead to underground conversions, reliability reports. And so what we have done concurrent to the franchise agreement is to create a memorandum of agreement that really kind of official, in an official form, outlines what those priorities are. They hold us accountable, there's clarity for the city, and those have been very successful concurrent to the renewal of the franchise agreement. And in the city attorney's remarks, I don't think we really heard the term municipalization. And so when I've looked very quickly at the contract or the proposal that you all are considering, there are kind of two paths. A lot of discussion about municipalization, and the other is extracting kind of additional value out of the franchise renewal process. So I'm going to spend a minute to talk about the municipalization piece because this is critically important. The City of Clearwater's current agreement does not have a purchase option. And Duke Energy's system is not for sale. Not here, not anywhere within the state of Florida. And the franchise, again, does not grant that authority to serve. So what does it mean that you don't have a franchise, a buyout clause? What it means is that we will not be negotiating a purchase price. If the city is actually interested in municipalization, taking over the system, you will have to go through a process of condemnation, which is lengthy, expensive, and very complicated. And I feel like it's really important to emphasize that. But the message I really want to leave you with is we have the opportunity to build on the decades of work that we have had together, which is sitting down at a table, understanding what is important. I also agree with the city attorney. You all deserve the right to be armed with information. And nobody knows our system better than us. Not consultants, even the most brilliant of consultants. We know our system best. The questions that you have, we are able to provide those to you. And you will help to hold us accountable in that process. I also want to address the fact that, our commitment to Clearwater really has never wavered. It is about providing safe, reliable service. And, affordability is very real. We know this for our customers every single day. And so as we work every single day to decrease prices, we have already twice this year decreased our price. Customers now are paying about $20 less per 1,000 kWh than they were last year. And in January of 2025, we have an agreement in front of the Florida Public Service Commission that's about to be hopefully approved. And our customers will pay less beginning in 2025 than they have been paying in 2024. We pass along fuel savings. We are investing in our power plants to increase the heat rate, which basically allows us to decrease the amount of fuel that our customers pay for. And this is an ongoing commitment that we will never waver from. And certainly as we watch Mother Nature out in the Atlantic, the Caribbean, we know that already there's a storm brewing. Duke Energy Florida has already started its process for storm restoration. And we are, because of our scale, we can tap into our resources in North Carolina, the Midwest, and other places. So we don't just work here, we live here. Our employees call Clearwater home. Many of them do. I worked out at Clearwater Operating Center for many years. Keeping the lights on is a critically important privilege and honor and obligation that we have. And what we would recommend is that the city consider tonight to only table the proposal, to give us an opportunity to sit down, to answer a lot of the questions that you already have, and allow us to work with you so that you are armed with additional information before you perhaps come back to this agenda item at some other point to determine whether you need to still take that action. So thank you for your time this evening. Very appreciative. Thank you.
Does anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.2?
Joe Evich, 2296 Habersham Drive, Clearwater. It's been a few years since I've been up in front of this podium, as a former member of the Fire Task Force Budget Review Committee and Charter Review Committee. I'd like to echo some of her points. Wasn't anticipating to follow the president of Duke Energy. But one salient point, she mentioned condemnation and eminent domain. Back in 2006, Pacific Gas and Electric spent more than $10 million to defend the ballot initiative to allow Sacramento municipal utilities district service customers in a particular county. The utility had estimated that it could lose about $43 million annually in gross profits. What she's trying to tell you is you're in a no-win situation. You need to table this and save the $500,000. Excellent sales job on terms of the contracts that the city has done. The city attorney brought up. However, this is a monopoly, so to speak, and the study has some wording in there that says study to evaluate renewable energy. Are we looking at renewable energy? Is that what we're trying to do in a roundabout way? Or are we looking for alternatives to do that? The study benefits indicated transmission and distribution statewide in this proposal. What exactly does that mean? You highlighted the expense of the engineers and the program managers being only $100,000, but the cost of it for the information. $80,000 for attorney. I don't know what an attorney makes in DC, but $300 to $500 maybe an hour. You're getting 265 hours to 160 hours over the course of this study over 10 months. There was a reference the city manager made that was in this proposal about a number of these facilities that NextGen has operated with. Chicago, it was a 12-month study. They rejected it. It was not in their best interest. Decatur, Iowa, 2017. It was voted on in 2018. And in 2024, they're still deciding. Colorado, Boulder, 8 years. They decided it's not in their best interest and they discontinued it. NextGen is a 10-year-old, 12-year-old company with 56 employees and $12 million in revenue. So they're going to program manage this. My question is, how are you going to generate the power should you decide to kick Duke Energy out? Because the study doesn't talk about generation. I think they have all the generation power. Because in this study, it says it continues assumptions to continue to get the service from Duke. They're willing to negotiate and sit down and come to a reasonable. This study is going to take you, if you don't table this, you're going to spend that much money over the course of time just to get there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks
you. Your
again.
time's up. Yeah.
Thank you. And President Truman once said, referendum, this should go to a public referendum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.2?
Good evening. My name's Rick Evans. I'm just a regular old citizen of Clearwater. To give you some context why I'm here, I know this will be a shock, but I'm a former New Yorker who's transplanted to Florida.
Really?
You can tell from my Alabama accent, I'm sure. The reason this was so passionate to me when I heard about it is I lived in a part of New York where they actually did this and actually had the city run the electric at the time. not only was the service better, the rates went down in time, and I heard somebody talk about underground lines. I actually lived in a place where they actually put the lines underground, and New York does suffer hurricanes just like Florida, not as many. But during Sandy, I was in a neighborhood that actually had just had my lines put underground, and that was in that only one part of the town, only part of the grid that didn't lose power. People were out for 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm very excited about this, and I hope we go forth with it. Now, after hearing that, I don't know much about electricity, I'm only a consumer, but I know stuff about business, and if they're here trying to tell you not even to do the study, there must be a reason they're telling you not to do the study, because what you're gonna find is better for us and not for them. That's all I have to say, thank you.
Hey, anyone else here from the public desire to speak to the agenda item 7.2?
Excuse me. Good evening, Patrick Raftery once again. This item was presented by City Attorney Margolis on Monday, created quite a stir amongst myself and some people that were watching the work session, and then some residents responding to the $504,000 expenditure for this study. After all, I believe it is simply a feasibility study to examine the data and the results that might result from that examination to allow you to make a decision whether you would go forward with it or not. On Monday, Mr. Margolis expressed a doubt as to how Duke would react to this proposal. He wasn't certain where it was going to go. They've appeared tonight, and they have made some statements to us. They've made an offer that it be delayed slightly while you sit down and talk to them. And that is certainly something you should be considering. A lot of residents will be affected by this. In fact, from where I stand, I will suggest this is one of the biggest decisions this council will make affecting every resident in the city of Clearwater. So you need to do it carefully. You need to be aware of all of the facts and all of the things that may happen, whichever decision you made. However, once again, I will say, this is a feasibility study, whether you should go forward or not. Perhaps the right thing to do is to sit down with Duke before you go forward. They've made that offer. Let them listen to what you have to need from them or what they might offer. By the same token, they should not be afraid of a feasibility study. It might show that remaining with Duke Energy is the right way to go, because that study could indicate, do not make this change, remain with Duke Energy. That it remains to be determined. So I think there's some options here for you to consider. Listening to Duke before you proceed, or proceeding with the feasibility study. I would make one recommendation that was discussed on Monday, that if you have the study done, and the study recommends that you proceed with establishing your own electrical supply, that you put it on a referendum to the residents of Clearwater, because every one of us will be affected by that decision, and we need to be able to say whether we are in favor of it or not. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else for agenda item 7.2?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Bill Jones, and I'm going to try to speak up. I don't know very much about electricity, and I'm just know when I flip the switch, I hope it works. I'm Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West. I've been around here a long time. I was here when the president of Duke Energy was sitting on the local Chamber of Commerce board, and also when Mike Meidel was actually working for Florida Power and helping us with economic development in this community. And during the first 2 years of my service on the council, I do think that there seemed to be more of a cooperative relationship between the power supplier and the citizens in the community. That sort of went away when I was during the second 2 terms. And then more recently, some of the actions related to trimming of trees, not avoiding undergrounding when major lines were being replaced, especially when we hear of other communities that are doing far more extensive undergrounding for safety as well as for aesthetics. So I hope those will be folded into your discussions, and I thank you for your spending the time at least thinking about this in a very serious manner.
Anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.2?
Hello, Lucas Holtick, 2397 Wind Gap Place in Clearwater. I just wanted to say I do fully support doing the study. It's important to note that this is not a vote to ditch Duke. It's a vote on deciding to weigh the city's options, and that's just the responsible thing to do. Truth is that Duke has not been a great steward over our energy pricing, service, infrastructure, or urban forest. If anyone is skeptical of that assertion, I invite you to look no further than Duke's 1 to 2 star ratings on Google. It's interesting that they show up today when their franchise agreement is on the chopping block, but remained quiet for years as customer complaints went unaddressed. Too little, too late, in my opinion. Duke is no longer serving Clearwater's needs. Winter Park broke with Duke in 2005, and today their power rates are lower than surrounding municipalities, and the city is making a profit. Don't listen to the idle threats brought today by Duke's representatives. Do the study.
Are there any other citizens to be heard on agenda item 7.2?
So excited about this one because Tricia Kirby, because I have been asking you guys for this, and I'm here cheering you on. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, it's a feasibility study, but I'm really grateful that you're at least considering the option because honestly, I feel very, very good about it. I want to say, I don't know what she's smoking back there, that she says our rates are going to go down because the Public Service Commission, Duke asked for an $820 million rate increase. So that is not your bill lowering. My usage of electricity has gone down, and my bill keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Are they a good steward? No, they lie to the people of Clearwater. Go ahead and put it to referendum. Clearwater citizens hate them. They are chopping down our trees. They don't listen to what we're saying. They meet with us. Well, they met with me. The guy was very nice, I will say this. But he also said, we're chopping down your trees. Like, there's literally nothing you can do to stop them. They don't care what we think. They don't care what they're doing to our urban forest. They don't care. And ultimately, when I looked at the energy companies all around the state of Florida, there's a bunch of them that have already done this. So I highly recommend, I don't know if feasibility study-wise, but literally, if I were you like picking up the phone, pick up the phone and call Winter Park and say, hey, how did you do this? Let us know. Good, bad, what are the downsides? What are the upsides? Call every single municipality-owned electric company in the state of Florida and ask them, what are the steps involved? And of course, Duke is throwing a lot of money and like, we'll buy this for you, we'll put our name on that venue or whatever, but you know what? While you're chopping down our trees and not listening to our citizens, we're not happy about that. And while you're raising our electric rates, including for solar usage too, we're not happy about that either. If there's any way you guys can do a study, I'm all for it, 100%. I think it's a great idea to at least look at it and assess it. Is it the right thing for us long term? And also disregard some of our campaign donations. I know some of you taking campaign donations from Duke. Let's just be honest here and call it what it is. I know it's like a little bit of a bribe, but they do it to everybody. I'm just still going to ask you to disregard that and be thinking about the good of the public, our actual citizens here. Really think what is going to be in the best interest long-term for the city of Clearwater, whether it's undergrounding lines, maintaining our urban forest canopy, lower rates, more solar. There's lots of stuff that you guys can do. You have the power. You have the power. Okay, last but not least, Alan Mayberry.
Yes.
Thank you. See, I can't remember. My friends are like texting me on Facebook saying it was Alan Mayberry. Because there are people at home right now watching these meetings who care, who don't show up and speak like I do, and I don't want to ever call myself a complainer. I really genuinely care. I love our city. I do. I want to see us do what's right for everybody, and I appreciate every single one of you being a public servant. Thank you.
Anyone else here from the public desire to speak to agenda item 7.2?
apologize, I did not get here early enough to fill this out in advance. Good evening, my name is Rudy Michaelek, Mr. Mayor, council members, Ms. Poirier, Mr. Margolis. I do appreciate hearing you, Mr. Margolis, all the time when you speak. The comments that I would like to make, I think, deal specifically with the item that's on the agenda, which is simply this, whether or not to approve a feasibility study. With the background that I have in business and having run some major corporations, one of the things that was always important in any organization's growth and productivity, and much the same in the city, is the ability to not only provide an excellent product, but also to be able to do that at the most reasonable price. And every effort that can be made to find that reasonable price, I think, should be explored. You would have, if I could use another term, a fiduciary responsibility to see that the best economics and the best opportunities are put in front of the citizens of the city of Clearwater. The opportunity to do that is based upon having expert consultants that can come and advise you on specific topic areas that may well advance the opportunities within the city. I think it's important to look at options, always options that are in front of you. The one thing that I realized during the comments earlier here was that there are different parts or pieces, if you would, to this agreement, this consultant agreement. And so there may be stages of the consultant agreement that could be put into effect in a stair step, if you would, based upon identifying first the certain outcomes or answers you're looking for. In other words, if a rate structure review says it's not going to work, do you really need to spend all the time with the expensive engineers to determine whether or not you have the right resources there in order to do that? I'm not sure how that arrangement is structured, but I would simply point that out. So the pieces of the contract may in fact give you an opportunity to spend a little bit less money, but to get the basic answers that you need in order to know whether to move forward with the project. I would strongly recommend that you do in fact move forward with this project. I think it's in the best interest of the city and of the citizens to always know that you're looking out for their best interests when it comes to the cost that they're going to have to pay in the future for the things that they need in order to live within the city. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public desiring to speak to agenda item 7.2? Okay. Seeing none, we'll enter into council discussion, and can't make a motion myself, but I do want to just get us started discussing. And I just want to say a few things because I commented on this item at the work session on Monday. First, I want to thank Ms. Satius for coming tonight to speak. And Mr. Baker has been a good friend of Clearwater for years and been very active in all kinds of organizations here in Clearwater, and certainly appreciate his service. And we talked last night about engaging in dialogue regardless of whether we do the study here tonight. And I appreciate you coming over here tonight and presenting. For me, to what some of the others have said, this is just a study. I've talked to Ms. Satius about that. I've talked to others about this. We're just doing a study. We're not making any decisions to do anything. But I am attentive to what City Attorney said earlier, and he and I talked about earlier today. It's been 30 years since Clearwater negotiated a franchise agreement. And I understand that a lot of those are fairly common provisions that all municipalities enter into, and it's a fairly standard agreement. But it is a big number when you add up, we use tonight, upwards of $200 million over a span of time to the city of Clearwater. And for any contract negotiation, even if it is fairly standard contract templates, I practicing law for 30 years, I always wanted my client to be prepared for that kind of negotiation on that level with that amount of money. So for me, I had a guest in my office who's a business leader over in Tampa today, and we were talking, and his quote was, "Information is knowledge is power. You really need to equip yourself and prepare yourself the best you can for these important talks we're going to have. Yes, in many ways, we've had a very good relationship with Duke over the years and served this community well. At the same time, we need and we have a duty to do our due diligence on behalf of the citizens of Clearwater and to not enter into these negotiations without really equipping ourselves with the adequate information to understand electric service to this community, where it's been, what other communities are doing, and again, it's simply a study. And I don't know if we get the study results back, if I would support starting our own municipal or working to try to acquire the electrical service here to our citizens. I don't know, but I am interested in what the study shows. And as I shared on Monday, was concerned about the amount of the fee, but Mr. Margolis has explained tonight, it's not really inconsistent with what other utility studies we've done as far as the amount, when we've had to involve engineers for things. So it's not coming from a portion of our budget that would have any effect on the millage or our taxes. And I am for doing the study because I believe it helps us equip ourselves with information to do the best job we can to negotiate for the citizens of Clearwater this important, hadn't been done for almost 30 years, franchise agreement. Great respect for, the folks from Duke who have come here tonight, but I do agree with some of the folks that come to the podium. Anytime I've been in negotiations as an attorney over 30 years, if the opposing party really doesn't want you to do something, then that raises my eyebrows, because here, Duke clearly does not want us to do this study. And that, I wouldn't say it's concerning to me, but many have noticed that, because what's the harm in the city doing a study? Just to prepare itself, gather information so that we can have intelligent talks about the way forward, potentially with Duke. So those are just the things I wanted to share. And then I'll let the other council weigh in with what their thoughts are. Councilmember Cotton?
Yes, thank you very much. Aside from the public that has spoke tonight, I've also spoke to quite a few members of the public who have shared their sentiment of this being a good idea as well. I'd also like to point to Ms. McManus, the article she did in the Times on 7:30, where she pointed out the Winter Park study, noting they switched in 2005, have lowered customer rates by 27.8%. Last year, they made $9 million profit, and they're using those profits to reinvest in their infrastructure by undergrounding their power, and have already completed 80% of that and will be at 100% by 2030. That's huge. When I look at that, this is, something that I ran on was infrastructure. My time as a first responder, emergency management coordinator, that's something that you don't see a lot of investments with the municipalities really putting on the forward front, and then it's a giant cost later on. So to have the ability and to see other municipalities in Florida where this has worked out, and not only worked out for the municipality itself, but also the best interest of its residents, I think that speaks volume just to Winter Park alone, not to mention other municipalities that have done this, and it's been beneficial to them as well. I would have to agree with some of the members of the public that spoke to this. Mayor, you also alluded to this, but it is nice to see Duke representatives here to discuss the issue, but it makes me believe we're doing the right thing and pushing forward with a study. Typically, when somebody's sitting there saying you don't need to do it, give us more time to talk about it, maybe you're doing the right thing when it's the right thing. So I also don't see why we can't push forward with this study while allowing staff to talk with Duke representatives. Let's all come together all at the same time, see what we can do to make the best decision for the residents. Maybe that is with Duke, who knows? We'll see what the study shows, we'll see what Duke and their team's able to come up with, and maybe make a good decision for everyone. Like I said, I ran on this, and I feel like there are a few times that we have the ability as human beings to do good things, and there are very few times when we have the ability to do great things. And I think that after seeing where this study could potentially put us, this gives us the ability as legislators to do a great thing for our residents. So I am definitely for moving forward with this study because of the potential that it could have.
Anybody else? Vice Mayor?
Okay, well, you know, I don't want to repeat everything that's been said up here. I'm for the feasibility study. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to our citizens to find out what the best thing is for them. And this doesn't mean we're going to municipalize the electric, it just means we're going to study and see what the benefit is of it. We may end up making a decision that's not right for Clearwater. But I was prepared to read some emails that I got today from citizens that were supporting the feasibility study, but I don't think I'm going to read that. We already had some citizens step up to the podium tonight saying they thought it was a good thing, and I think you're going to hear from us. It's, you know, we do a lot of feasibility studies, as, you know, our attorney said, in Clearwater, because we aren't versed in everything, and we need to have experts tell us what decisions are the best decisions to make. And I'm not ashamed of that. I mean, in my career as a contractor, through my career, I talked to people that were smarter than me to make the right decisions, and I think we're doing that. We're going to be doing that tonight. So that's kind of where I stand. I'll pass it on to Michael.
First, let me begin with saying that, like every other major issue, I had many discussions with those who opposed the study as well as those who were for it. So in that way, it's not any different. What made it very different, and something that I'm very thankful for, this was the first time that both sides, by vast majority, communicated in a professional and respectful way, and I'm very thankful for that. Both sides made good arguments, and they were very respectful. So that in itself was a rare thing for me, at least in the 2 years that I've been here. I also had a great conversation with Ms. Seixas. We were both very candid. I heard her, and I believe I was heard as well. I always think it's very important, no matter how far away two partners are, communication is always a good thing. Some of the people that reached out to me, I'll be very honest with you, they're people some of them I feel are my mentors, and that have helped me, have guided me, and I respect their opinion. And some of them, you know, differ like usual, but one of the things, or one of the suggestions that I heard that I would like all the council to consider is it feasible, or is it something that the council will be interested in, to just pause for 30 to 60 days. Let's see how negotiation starts. If it doesn't work, then do the feasibility study. That is a suggestion that I did not hear up here, and is that something you all are interested in? Or just barrel through and get it approved tonight? Can we put a pause, see how negotiations go? And if it doesn't go smoothly, if we cannot negotiate something that is beneficial to this city, which is, as I discussed with Ms. Seixas, undergrounding, being more responsive when our citizens have concerns, returning phone calls, being better partners. If that cannot be negotiated, then move forward. How does everyone feel about that?
I'll start us off. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand it. I do not see why we can't just do both hand in hand. This will equip us with more information, as we've heard, by the end of 9 to 10 months, saying there's no delays or anything like that. It's not prohibiting us from talking to Duke and trying to already get more information and everything that's out there. It's just very early on, starting to get that ball rolling. I think the mayor's even pointed out that we're just getting the study to give us the most information possible. Yes, it's a ball rolling in a direction that takes us away from Duke, but that doesn't mean we're going to go away from Duke. So why not try and get that information? And I think delaying doing the study just puts us 60 days out further from starting that to get more information. So that's just where I'm at with it.
And I did ask city attorney about, early termination provisions if we got into it, and whether or not we could, and we got into conversations with Duke and felt like it was going forward well enough to the point where we could stop the contract, and you didn't think that that was something the consultant would be willing to put in. But that was my thought too, if we could have some type of early termination there. Or I also suggested, well, one of the public speakers suggested that we have a phased approach to it, which, firm I've worked for years often does that. They'll have phases, go, no-goes, when we get into negotiations. So I would be open to seeing if we can adjust the contract terms of the consultant with that respect, but I also agree with Councilmember Cotton. I don't think there's any reason to delay starting the study. I do see your concern, though, if things, and also talk with Duke at the same time. And I don't want to, get into it quickly, and then now we're already committed to spend the full amount, and we really don't need their services. So I don't know what if there were detailed conversations about what their willingness would be to put in provisions like that for early termination or not, but.
So there's a few different aspects of it. Part of it is the segmentation of the contract into different disciplines, because we have the engineering discipline, the feasibility consulting, financial discipline, and the legal discipline. So those are all three different components that are handled by three different entities. Newgen is the overall, but there's three different segments to it. I do think the three segments are designed to work in concert. So for example, I heard one gentleman say earlier, well, could we do the financial feasibility without the engineering? But the financial feasibility is dependent upon the engineering. Like, the engineering actually has to be done first, so that we as I understand it, so that we understand the grid and things of that nature. So I do believe the three segments go together. As far as early termination, I don't know if it works quite like that. The way it's phrased in the contract is a not to exceed amount. We have presented it in the interest of transparency as a worst case scenario, because these things do tend to get expensive. And so honestly, I've been operating under the assumption that we will spend the full $504,000, but we are not obligated to spend $504,000, because as the mayor knows, attorneys in particular are billed by the hour. And so if the city does reach a point, particularly on the legal side, where we have not spent that portion of it, I do believe we'll be able to pause that portion of it. I cannot say that's the same, however, for the engineering and financial side, because they're going to have to bring in engineers who will be coming down here to Florida to do field work. I do believe they will be incurring those costs up front. So to the point that's been raised, yes, I do believe that there will be opportunities to pause this. That will be less than $504,000 total if a successful agreement is reached in the interim. But it is very difficult to answer on the dais how much of those savings would materialize. There's a lot of different ways that can play out. I know the mayor, having been in many, many conversations and many negotiations over the years, sometimes you start a contract like this and poof, it's like manna from heaven. And all of a sudden, the city's getting everything we want, and they're coming to the table, giving you everything, and the council is thrilled. And you get it done in 30 days, and people say, well, why'd you spend that money? And the answer is, because if you didn't spend the money, you wouldn't have gotten anything out of them. So sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes it goes the opposite way. Sometimes you go the distance with it. So it's been presented in the interest of transparency to the public as a not to exceed amount. Again, I've operated under the assumption that we will spend the full $504,000, because I think that's just the right thing to do for the public, so that people know going up front what you're going to spend. But I do believe there will be opportunities for cost savings, at least on the legal side, if an agreement is reached in the interim.
Councilmember Menino.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you, Duke and your representatives, your family, for showing up and having discussion with us. Mr. Baker, thank you for our candid phone call. I think we were both transparent and honest, and I greatly appreciate that. I think it would be I would be remiss if I didn't say I do wish that we had this open, proactive dialogue as we, for a month and a half, had emotional residents lined out the door regarding their trees. Unfortunately, with the contract coming to expiring, now we're here and having the discussions. I greatly appreciate you being part of it. I feel the same as some as you do. I think we're kind of making this a muddier deal than it needs to be, that we're saying statements like this affects every resident in our city. It's our fiduciary responsibility. All we're discussing on this agenda item 7.2 is approving a feasibility study, and that's all we're doing. We're not committing to anything on the long run. We're not making statements towards how we believe this study will go or should go. We're making a commitment that I think we all took in an oath of office and a responsibility to do our due diligence, to do our homework, and make the best decision that we can for the greatest good of our residents and for the city of Clearwater. And that's where it brings me to my decision in being supportive. I had 2 questions leading up through the week, and the first one was with respect to budget and where that money was coming from, and is this affecting a millage? Is this affecting our overall budget? Finding out that they're unallocated funds and it's not affecting any of that, I think, is important in this discussion. The second thing that came to mind was, and with all due respect, Duke is and has been very philanthropic in our community, and that has to be an important lever included in this decision process. And I greatly appreciate the city attorney telling us that is a lever that can be placed into that study so that we do have the ability to have discussions regarding that. But as far as simplification, I'm in support of this council moving forward with the simple terms of a feasibility study. And again, not committing to knowing the long-run outcome and what is going to happen. I think that is in our best interest of our citizens and our city to commit to making that feasibility study happen. I would not be in favor of tabling it for 20, 30, 60, 90 days. I don't know where that would get us. I think discussions and negotiations is not one or the other. We can start a feasibility study and still sit down as grown-ups of a municipality and a respected organization in our community and still have fruit-filled discussions and see where that takes us. I don't think it's one or the other, but I am supportive of moving forward with our feasibility study and seeing where that goes. I would warn us to be a bit careful when we're comparing cities like Winter Park and Clearwater. I want to make sure that we fully grasp and we're comparing apples to apples. I think Winter Park had the ability to purchase infrastructure and equipment, and Duke has told us that they're not for sale. So that is a completely different pathway, probably one that is a lot more expensive. Not a genius in electricity. I'm more with Mr. Johnson, as he says, I flick the light and pray it comes on, and when it does, I'm excited. So, but this is an opportunity to have professionals that are very equipped to handle these very in-depth moving parts of a conversation and answer all of that through the feasibility study and point us in a direction, give us as council and as staff the tools to make the best decision for the city and for the citizens.
Can I have my rebuttal on that? So I've heard all 4, and I understand your perspective. After all the conversations I had, I just felt it would be remiss if I did not put that option out there, because I think it's a viable option, and it was one that was communicated to me quite often. I do think we are starting a path that may be long and arduous, and I think we need to be united in this. So
I agree on the unity, and that's why I kind of wanted to get it started, but I think we all, on this issue, we all need to be in consensus. So I appreciate you sharing what you just shared, because I think that's important too. And I wanted to point out too that, Mr. Margolis, I today talked about, ask him about, could this study somehow benefit the city in other ways? Are there other utility departments that we have within the city that could maybe benefit from some of the knowledge that we learned through this study? And we haven't had a chance to talk with the department heads in our different utility departments, but I could see some potential synergies, some learning that our other departments might get out of this as well. And, at the end of the day, we're trying to do the best we can for Clearwater citizens who happen to be customers of Duke right now. And to really listen to them and to investigate this and to try to see what the best solution is for local residents. And so it's not about us, it's not about Duke. For us, I think as a council, it's about our citizens and what electric service is the best for them. And we may not go forward with this, but again, as we pointed out, it's a big number, and as Ms. Seixas pointed out, very long relationship, very important relationship to the city of Clearwater. So I just feel with my experience in doing big deals like this, that as the gentleman told me today, information is power. And that said, I told Ms. Seixas last night, and I welcome the opportunity to sit down with you and talk with you and have discussions as this study goes forward. So if that's what the council decides to do tonight. So, okay, any other discussion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve agenda item 7.2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move to item 8.1.
8.1 is a second reading, which I'll pull up in a moment. 8.1 is ordinance number 9773-24, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending ordinance number 9167-18, recorded in OR Book 20203, pages 1614 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
Okay. Any council discussion on this? And anyone here from the public desire to speak to item 8.1?
I think he was dropping it.
Mr. Johnson, no? Just dropping a card? Yes. Any council discussion on agenda item 8.1? Do you need to read it again, or are we good?
I've read the title.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 8.1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. This time we'll move to agenda item 9.1.
North Beach update.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Looks like I cleared out the room. So.
The beach report again.
Appreciate the time. So first thing from the North Beach, we are monitoring the storm that's going on. It's looking like 4 to 8 inches of rain over about a 5-day period. We're looking at tide, so we'll meet in the morning with some of the crews. We'll be talking through plans. We'll put some additional folks on standby, as well as likely bring some crews in to have them available through the rain events to be able to respond. So from that standpoint, we'll be ready for the weekend weather. I did want to thank the public communications team as well as the neighborhoods out there. Some of the neighborhood feedback we had got was it would be great if we had a website that we could go to get information. So the public communications team has helped us put together the website. So we'll be able to provide updates as we're going through what's going on with the project, links. So they've already put some. They've created some follow-on pages with just general stormwater information, what a king tide is, how tidal valves and all work. So having a little bit more readily available info for folks. They're intended to be living pages, so we will update them as we're going to, just so that some of the residents can get to information a little bit easier than having to wait on emails coming. So with that, just the website up there is the myclearwater.com / North Beach is the one for the North Beach for folks to get. So if they put that in, that'll take them to that link. Just one other note too, for the North Beach folks, we'll give them a heads up. And unfortunately, well, some of the folks are still here. They will be transitioning out to the beach area as part of their Q3 period to. Oh, okay. Well,
Funny.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
The look on your face was so cute.
So there is different information. They even put a video and everything together for the North Beach portion of things. So there's quite a bit of info that's out there. Again, we'll keep adding to this. We'll update with projects as we get more information and all, so that folks can go out and grab some of that information. So we're starting to say Duke will be transitioning out to some of that North Beach area. So there'll be additional crews out there. Those are not necessarily ours when they start seeing those electrical crews out there. Some of that will be some of the tree trimming and stuff that they'll be doing out there. So we'll have our crews still out there, but there, you may see some additional crews. In addition to that, we just awarded the next piece with the permanent pump stations, the Benthic survey. They'll be going out. They can only do it set times of the year. That's where they look at the seagrass and some of the other natural living issues that are out there. So that's an FDEP requirement as part of these permanent pump stations going in to make sure when we put those permanent pumps, we're not harming the sea life at those locations. So we have just added that to it. That will be more information so that we can keep moving with the permanent pump designs. So with that, I will pause if there's questions.
If I can just say something. Marcus, you've done great. When I think of high-performing government, you as a director, your team, giving us these updates and the work that you guys are putting into North Beach has been great. And now to see, once again, this high-performing government with Joelle and her team coming to assist you guys, that's just that working together to make sure the residents are well-informed, well aware of what's going on, the key issues that are affecting our areas and what we're doing to overcome it. And the fact that it's living, I know, takes a lot of work for Joelle and her staff as well as your staff. So great job in this. I think it's tremendous. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Well, Councilman Cotton beat me to the punch again, but I wanted to say the same thing to you. And I looked at the video you had on the website today. That's a great video. I actually sent that link to the North Beach stakeholders to get it put out to their people, because what I liked about it right there, you could see the phone number.
Yes.
If one of the pumps fail, there it is, boom, right there, call. And I think that you get a lot of people helping you with that if you have an issue with the pumps going down. So thanks again.
I've got some compliments too from North Beach residents just after the initial mix-up, that they really appreciate the follow-up to that and how it's been working since then.
I was going to say very much the very same thing. I greatly appreciate the job you're doing in your team. I did have just one question. I think we said, and maybe it was last week or the week before, during a blue sky rain, somehow the pump on its own just kind of shut down. Do we have a process in place going through especially a rainy weekend where we can be identified other than a resident calling a number, or is there a process of checking it every certain hours? Or
So the pumps, they've been working on a bunch of that. They're actually the lifts that are out there in the storm drains are on floats. Those floats will trigger. So I actually get text messages. There's about 18 of us that get text messages depending on what the pumps are doing. We're a little bit limited because the temporary and the way that we're doing it, it's not the permanent, so it's not quite as responsive as we would like, but those notifications do go out. They've been working with the rental company, partly how it's wired. They're trying to change that just a little bit so we can get quicker notifications. They were seeing it was like a 20-minute lag from when it was shutting off. So they're trying to work through some of those pieces with the rental company, but we do get an automatic notification also.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other report from the city manager?
I want to echo what Marcus said in terms of our teams are getting prepared for the storm. I know that the governor did just recently declare a state of emergency for the state of Florida, so we are monitoring that storm. We will all shortly be inundated by updates from Chief Graham. He does a really great job in terms of keeping us all up to date. I actually have a call with him immediately following this to talk about next steps, so we will be in touch. But just know that our teams are watching the storm and will be prepared for this.
Saw him, email from him this afternoon. And,
Yeah, we'll be getting a lot of
on
them.
that.
Mhm.
We're
He
in good
communicates well.
hands. Very impressed with his leadership and feel like under his guidance, we're well prepared.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to agenda item 10. City attorney reports. You feel like you've talked enough? Or you
My water bottle is empty. The only thing I will say is that, as we all know, and some of you know, unfortunately, more than others, in public service, feedback tends to skew negative, right? Because people tend to come forward with complaints, with things they're unhappy about, criticism. It's just the nature, right, of the job. And as pointed out earlier, it's not that often that you get to do really great things. But in my opinion, Marcus, I think, does great things just about every day. I always tell my staff that I will evaluate them based on the challenge and the difficulty of the task that they've been given. Because anyone can look great when they have an easy job, but when your job is hard and you have to overcome challenges, that is the real measure of someone's success, in my opinion. And in my opinion, for whatever it is worth, Marcus, I think, has done an incredible job for the city. I know the city manager knows that I feel that way, but I wanted to say it in public, especially because he's here and because the council has also said it. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we move to agenda item 11, closing comments by council members. Councilmember Cotton?
I don't have anything to say. I think that I've said enough tonight, so thank you.
Councilmember Teixeira?
I really do want to give a shout out to the concert that I watched last night. It was one of the most unique experiences I've ever had, where the musician was dancing just as much as the dancers, and they used interpretive dance and modern and hip hop and also acrobats, where she was upside down in ropes and trapezes and still playing that violin. And I thought, what a great thing that is, that we have such a talented person on a Wednesday in downtown in Clearwater. So I just want to end with a nice note and wish everyone to have a safe weekend as we face this storm.
Councilmember Menino?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Okay, well, I've got more PSTA news. I'm very proud of this. Seems like we're always winning an award. Well, PSTA and private sector partners Jones Worley and H.H. Lochner were recognized for their collaboration on the region's first of its kind rapid transit service. So they won the Nationwide Excellence and Inclusion Collaboration Award for the Sunrunner, Tampa Bay region's first of a kind bus rapid transit system. So it continues to get awards, and I'm very proud of what they do. Just wanted to bring that forward.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item 12, closing comments by mayor. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. One, these cute little kids who are up here in front of us tonight at the beginning of the meeting, unfortunately, they're all going back to school here very soon. So unfortunate for them, because hopefully they've had a great summer, but there are several back-to-school events at our City of Clearwater rec centers this weekend, and hope that many citizens will participate. In the past, have been really successful, and hope that our citizens will come out to join in that. And then, as Councilmember Teixeira pointed out, last night, a really good concert, fantastic performance. But we have concerts, I think, the next 4 nights in a row. So it's the 1-year kind of celebration of the sound and diversity and interesting acts. So I encourage the public to come out and enjoy our Tampa Bay's best outdoor music venue is what I call it, the Bay Care Sound this weekend. With that, we've had a good meeting. Appreciate the discussion and the staff preparation helping us get through it, and the public attending and offering your thoughts tonight. So if there's nothing else to come before the council, I'll adjourn the meeting.